overcast and fog-free for many. Into Thursday, we'll see a bit of a westy split developing, cloudier skies towards the east, but there will be some brighter spells here, though 1 or 2 showers are possible. Best of the sunshine across the west, unbroken in places. Generally a light northerly breeze. Over the next few days, high pressure holds on, keeps it largely dry. Weak weather fronts try to move in from the north and temperatures around average.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Well, hello there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking. 200 asylum seeker children are apparently missing from the system. Who are they? Where have they gone? Who's to blame? How do we fix it? They are the things that are on my mind when it comes to that topic tonight. What do you make to it? And menopause leave, should that be a thing when it comes to the public sector, the private sector in this country? It has been rejected as a concept, apparently not least because it would be discriminatory against men. What do you make to that? Also, as well, about 70% of hospital trusts apparently still have some form of visiting restrictions. This is, of course, all to do with COVID. What do you make to this? Do you think it is basic common sense, or do you think it is lunacy? I want your thoughts on that. And kids at school, who should have the final say as to what they're taught, particularly when it comes to issues like sex education, relationships, gender, and all that kind of stuff? Because apparently, lots of parents have been blocked from seeing the material that their kids are being taught. But where should the decisions lie? Is it you as a parent, or does teacher know best? I want your thoughts on all of that, but let's bring ourselves up to speed, shall we, with tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you and good evening to you. Our top story on GB News today. A relative of the murder victim Zara Alina says probation officers have blood on their hands after a report found her killer was released from prison just days before carrying out the attack. Jordan McSweeney was given a life sentence last month after he admitted killing the law graduate. He attacked 35-year-old Zara in East London as she walked home after a night out last June. The findings show McSweeney should have been treated as a high risk of serious harm offender, but he was wrongly graded as a medium risk. Zara's aunt, Farah Naz, says more needs to be done to avoid the same thing happening again.
Our streets are not safe. Probation work has to be tight, has to be high quality, because the risks, the stake is high. The stake is lives. Zara's life was taken, and probation have blood on their hands.
Well, the Policing Minister, Chris Philps, says the government has ordered a review into how McSweeney's probation was managed.
The probation service, I think, has completely accepted the recommendations the inspector has made. They're making changes to the way they risk assess offenders. They're putting more resources into it. They've hired, I think, an extra couple of thousand, 2,500 probation service staff in the last 2 years. They're increasing their funding by £155 million to make sure this doesn't happen again. They're supervising, I think, over 200,000 offenders. This kind of incident is thankfully very rare, but it is appalling and heartbreaking when it does happen.
Well, in other news today, the chairman of the BBC says he won't stand down from his role over the Boris Johnson loan row. Richard Sharp made the comments as he welcomed a review by the Commissioner of Public Appointments into how he got his job. Mr Sharp's under scrutiny over his links to the former Prime Minister and his role in talks over an £800,000 loan. Speaking to the BBC, Mr Sharp says he's confident he was appointed on merit. Now, a senior Conservative MP has suggested the Prime Minister did not know Nadhim Zahawi had any outstanding tax issues when he appointed him as chair of the Conservative Party. And if you're watching on television, there are some flashing images coming up.
You're going to resign, Mrs Zahawi? Do you feel under pressure to resign, sir?
Well, Rishi Sunak has ordered an ethics inquiry into Mr Zahawi's tax affairs after he admitted paying a penalty to HMRC following an error, he said, over shares in a polling company that he co-founded. The former Chancellor has welcomed the investigation, saying he's confident he acted properly throughout. But the Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy is calling on the Tory party chair to resign.
The idea that you could have been Chancellor when you were negotiating this is simply offensive. This is not a miscalculation. You can't miscalculate to hold money offshore and then not pay it and then have to pay a penalty. I think whatever your political persuasion, in any government, this is an individual who would have resigned or would have been sacked. Yes, let us get into the detail of what in fact happened, but Nadhim Zahawi should no longer be on the front bench. That is absolutely clear.
In Scotland, the firefighter who was seriously hurt in a blaze at the famous Jenner's department store building in Edinburgh yesterday has been named. 38-year-old Barry Martin joined dozens of other crew members to tackle the flames, which broke out in Rose Street in the morning. He's still in hospital in a critical condition. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service saying they're still trying to work out what caused the fire. Scientists have moved the hands of the doomsday clock closer to midnight than ever before. The metaphorical clock measures how close humanity is to extinction. It now stands at 90 seconds to midnight, which is 10 seconds closer to midnight than when it last moved in 2020. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine is one of the main reasons, we're told, for the change. And on that, Poland has formally requested Germany's approval to send up to 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. The Polish Defence Minister saying the request comes as the security of the whole of Europe is at stake. A German government spokesperson says they'll treat the request with the utmost urgency. And that comes after Boris Johnson urged other countries to follow the UK's lead in providing tanks to Ukraine. Writing in today's Daily Mail newspaper, the former Prime Minister called on other nations to provide Kyiv with the weapons it needs to win the war. In the United States, classified documents have been found in the home of the former US Vice President Mike Pence. His lawyer says the files were in his Indiana home last week and passed on to the FBI for review. The search was done in the wake of the news that classified material was found in President Joe Biden's home and office outside of the White House. Former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home was also raided last August, in which top-secret documents were seized. Here at home, Princess Eugenie says she and her husband, Jack Brooksbank, are so excited to be expecting their second child. A photograph released on Instagram by the princess shows the couple's first child, August, hugging his mum's pregnant tummy. In a statement, the palace says the royal family is delighted and August is very much looking forward to being a big brother very soon. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Back now to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I will be keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, I've got the political consultant, Emma Burnell, and the leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin. Good evening to both of you. And welcome, of course, to all of you at home. You're very welcome tonight. And you know the drill if you're a regular viewer. It's not just about us three. It's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk is my email. Or you can tweet me at GBNews. If you just tuned in, you're thinking, what is on the menu for tonight? I want to talk to you about these so-called child asylum seekers that have gone missing. Who are they? Where have they gone? What do we do about it? I also want to talk about hospital visiting restrictions. About 70% of trusts still have restrictions. Why? Is this sensible? Or a little bit of a step too far? I want your thoughts on that. And schools, you know, these lessons to do with sex education, relationships and all the rest of it. Apparently, some of these kind of companies are restricting parents from being able to see the material, saying that it's things like breaches copyright and all the rest of it. What do you make to that? I wouldn't be having any of it if that was occurring in my my kids' school, I can tell you. Give me all your thoughts on those topics tonight, but let's get into our top one, shall we? The reports that these child asylum seekers, they're going missing, about 200 of them, apparently. In The Observer, it was saying that some of them have been abducted outside hotels, bundled into vehicles, and off they've gone. The Home Office is saying that it doesn't have the authority to detain these people. I use the word children, by the way, because that is what it's all saying everywhere. But if you ask me, I'm a little bit suspicious, to put it mildly, as to whether or not these are children in the first place. But anyway, David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a little bit suspicious as well. I mean, like you said, this story appeared in The Observer, so their whole narrative is to make us sort of sympathetic to the idea that there's a lot of asylum seekers coming over and they need help. But the figures of these 200 that went missing from Brighton is that 88% of them were Albanian. So they're not genuine asylum seekers. And then only 13 of them were under the age of 16. So that means 187 of them were between 16 and 18 officially, as they said. So many of them may have been adults as well. So they certainly don't need a lot of our sympathy. Probably what's happened is they've gone into the black economy, so on, that they were from Albania, that they prearranged to meet somebody and then disappeared. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be worried about mostly 16 to 18-year-old Albanians disappearing, not for their safety, but what I would be concerned about are the safety of British people who may come into contact with some of them who may have criminal intent. You know, and we saw, you know, just a terrible story this week of the Marine, the Marine recruit in Bournemouth who was murdered by an Afghan migrant who was 18 and said he was 14. So there's loads of issues to do with security.
Was that the one that was also a double murderer?
That's right. He murdered a double murder in Serbia, yes.
Emma Burnell, I suspect you might, judging by your face alone, which if you're listening and not watching, you can't see a face, it's very unimpressed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things to unpack from what David just said. First of all, these are unaccompanied minors. We have a duty of care to them, whether we decide that they will stay in the UK or go
back to Albania. How do you know that they're a minor?
Because they're children. That's what it's reported.
They say they are, but not necessarily.
I'm sorry, but until we know otherwise, let's assume that even if one of them is an unaccompanied minor, let's say that that's the policy that we should be working to, right? So these are unaccompanied minors. We owe them a duty of care, whether or not we decide to send them back to Albania or to give them asylum here. That's a separate question. But as we dehumanise these people who have been lost in our system,
Quick question. Do you think it's dehumanising someone? If someone gets on a boat, comes into the country and says, I'm 14, when you're not?
Well, I don't know. I don't know and you don't know. So until we do know, let's take what the facts that we've been given in a reputable newspaper. They may have a slant towards compassion, oh no, how awful, but this is a reputable newspaper. They're saying these are minors. They are almost certainly minors. They'll have fact-checked that. We are talking about minors who've gone missing, who are probably in the hands of the evil gangs that we've all agreed we should be trying to stop. We owe those kids a duty of care. If we decide that they don't have a valid asylum claim, that's a separate question, but it's not the same as saying these kids should just be sent off. And then you've got both this combination of the idea that they're A, working off in the black economy, and B, also a bunch of murderers. I mean, that's just baffling to me that you can hold those two ideas in your head at the same time.
They are two real issues that we've got in this country.
First of all, why don't we have a secure system that looks after these children properly, makes a decision as to whether they've got a valid claim or not, and then acts on it? When you say secure system,
what do you mean?
Well, I would say that first of all, we should not be having people going into hotels. That's a waste of everybody's resource. We should have a proper system. There should be valid, safe routes for people to come as they need to, and they can apply through those proper routes. The fact that we have people coming over in boats in the Channel is a failure of our system, not of people trying to get in illegally. It's because we don't have ways for them to come properly.
Lee Anderson, you might be familiar. I mean, you just laughed. Or you know what? You're preempting what I'm going to say. You know, you must have heard his update. He says that some of these people.
Is he going to box them?
No, he's not going to box them. She's on about Steve Bray, that pest, the protesting pest. Lee Anderson has offered him a boxing match for charity. But no, he's not offering to box these people. What he was suggesting is you detain them. You detain them safely, securely, whilst you're doing all your checks and your balances.
Well, I would say, I mean, detain is a loaded word, but I do think there should be centres for these people to live, not in the horrific conditions we saw them, where they were catching these, like, tuberculosis, Victorian diseases, when they were in Manston.
Hang on.
But proper facilities whereby we can process this properly.
And
they should not be coming in these numbers in the way that they are, because we should have safe and legal routes.
Gosh.
I mean, this is the bigger issue, isn't it? There's so much illegal immigration into the country, mostly from Albania and places where a lot of them coming through France, which is a safe country. So nobody coming from France is a genuine asylum seeker. So we need to stop the boats from coming from France and just push them back to France. And that would solve half the problem.
Well, you're not going to manage that because a lot of them have connections to people in the UK. We are a country that takes asylum and we're an island.
Well, we're not...
So we have to have a way of managing that process compassionately and legally and forcefully. Those three things should not be seen as in opposition to each other.
Well, I mean, the Border Force and the Royal Navy at the moment are escorting boats from the middle of the Channel to Dover. So that is the problem. The Border Force should be doing what the Border Force is supposed to do,
because we don't have a proper system to get them before they go to the boats. They should not be forced into the boats in the first place.
A safe country like France is not a genuine asylum seeker.
We are an island and an island that accepts asylum seekers. Those two things mean that there are going to be people coming. We've largely stopped them coming through road and train routes, so they're coming by boat. That is what's happened. We are not having systems whereby they can apply for safe and legal asylum from other countries. Therefore, they're coming in desperation across the Channel.
Well,
that should not be happening.
The vast majority of people who are now coming across the Channel are coming from Albania. Like this story
40% of them, which is not actually a majority.
The 200 people in Brighton who've gone missing, as I said, 88% of them are from Albania. So they're not genuine asylum seekers.
Please call them children. Until we know otherwise, please call them children.
Well, not necessarily.
Can I ask you a question then? Because you're a very kind person. You're sitting there saying, oh, you know, we should take them at their word, da-da-da. When you read that story that made the press yesterday or the day before of some guy that said he was 14 and lied, he wasn't 14 at all. A, he was an adult. B, he was a mass murderer. He'd killed 2 people already. C, he'd been done for drug dealing. And then D, he went on to kill someone else. Isn't there a part of you that sits there and goes, actually, maybe we do need to exercise a little bit of caution here?
I don't think we should have a lawless, ruleless society. I'm saying we should have good laws that we enforce well. That guy was a failure of our laws to be enforced well.
Do you know, but I get really frustrated with this because I feel, Emma, with all due respect, you're always pinning the blame on this country, the facilities. It's like a minute ago you were just saying we should have these wonderful facilities or these whatever words that you just use, these facilities.
Well, I said we should have facilities in which people don't catch tuberculosis, yes.
But where did this tuberculosis or whatever it was come from?
It came from the kind of conditions, the Victorian-level slum-like conditions that are where those kind of illnesses breed. That's the problem that we have. We are putting people into Victorian slum-like conditions and then wondering
they're not Victorian slum-like conditions.
They are. That's how you get tuberculosis.
Well,
That's literally how it happens.
I thought that a couple of these ailments, whatever these ailments were, and I think there were different ones, I thought they'd actually been brought via these people that were infected before arrival, and that's what had happened.
But you spread it by peeping people. Tuberculosis, we wiped it out in this country previously because we knocked down the slums. We are now putting people into inhumane conditions. However, we have to have rules. They have to be enforced. I've never argued against that, Michelle. I never have and I never will. You know that.
Where do all these wonderful facilities come from?
The way that we enforce those is by having a system that works.
Where do all these wonderful facilities come from?
Well, for a start, you don't need quite so big facilities if you have safe and legal routes. But secondly, there are plenty of ways that we can do this. We just have to make sure that the system works better. And unfortunately, nothing in this country works, and that includes the asylum system.
David Curtin.
Yeah, unfortunately, the country is full. There are no houses to put people in. If you are a British person and you want a council house, for example, you might be waiting 20, 30, 40 years. They're just simply all gone.
But we certainly need to build more houses.
This is why there's a lot, the people who are coming across illegally, there's nearly 50,000 last year, are coming because they know they get rewarded if they come to the country and get put into a 4- and 5-star hotels immediately. They get an Aspen card with £175 cash a week, as well as free board and lodging and so on. So these are all rewards people get for coming to the country, which is why more and more people are coming over, because they think, well, Britain is a soft touch. What we need to do is stop all of the benefits for people who are coming across illegally, and particularly for people who are not genuine asylum seekers, who are economic migrants from Albania and other places coming from a safe country like France. That needs to stop, and it can be done.
You guys are in touch. I mean, my inbox. What are you chuntering about, Emma?
I said it's a nonsense. We can't just pretend that these people aren't human and don't have rights.
I'm not saying they're not human, but if someone is coming to the country illegally, then they're taking advantage of the system.
If someone is claiming asylum, they have a right to claim asylum. While they are waiting for that asylum decision, which should be taken quicker, they should probably be working rather than claiming benefits. But we don't give them the right to do that.
Well, where do you stand on all of this? I've got to say, your primary concern seems to be the well-being and safety and all the rest of it of the people in the making the channel crossings. My primary concern is the well-being and the safety and all the rest of it of people who end up children in this country that end up in classrooms with men pretending to be children. My primary concern is not with the dude that's pretending to be a child, it's with the children in that classroom. It's with the foster carers that get these men in their home.
And they don't have to be. We are talking about a group of children. If there is somebody abusing that system, they should have the book thrown at them. But largely we are talking about vulnerable children. They are not in competition.
Well, do you know, I worry about this topic because I just feel that it's getting so out of hand now, and I do not see how anyone is going to get a grip of it. If this government wanted to have was serious, should I say, about getting a grip on all of these channel crossings, they would have done it by now, and all we're seeing is the numbers increasing. What do you think to it? What is the answer? I mean, that is the million-dollar question to all of this, isn't it? Safe and legal routes is what Emma's saying. Does that fix all of this? I don't know. You tell me. Judith says, can the general public of the UK sue the government for lack of management and care? Well, I tell you what, you talk about suing. There's some people that are doing quite well, actually, off all of this situation, and that is the lawyers. I wonder if they want this bringing to an end anytime soon. Karen says, whether they are children or not, I doubt that our pathetic government will really put much effort into finding them. Andy says the vast majority of so-called child asylum seekers are in reality adults masquerading as children to prevent deportation. Emma's not having any of that. Even as I'm reading that out, she's muttering, saying that it's basically she disagrees with you. Simon, says that we should not house migrants. We should house our own homeless people first. Adrian, the legal route for asylum seekers surely is to fly into a UK airport and present themselves to immigration. If your claim is genuine, you would be accepted. Keep your thoughts coming in. I've got to say, I can see that you are doing exactly that. My inbox is flying with this one. Emma's having none of it. I don't think we're going to reach a resolution anytime soon, so let's move on. Are you a woman? I mean, I say that these days as though it means something with common sense, but who knows? Anyway, should you get paid leave if you're going through the menopause and struggling with it? Apparently, that suggestion has been ruled out because, get this, it might be discriminatory to men. Is it? You tell me. I'll see you in 2 minutes.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs. This is Dewbs with you till 7. Alongside me, I've got to say, we've just been arguing throughout that entire break. The political consultant, Emma Burnell, the leader as well of the Heritage Party, David Caton. Emma and I was not agreeing at all. Emma is vastly concerned for the safety of 200 missing children. I'm just pondering, how on earth do you know that these are children? Emma's response is because the newspaper told her so. I don't know, don't wash with me. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Maybe I'm just being harsh. MPs sitting on the Women and Equalities Committee have suggested that the government should introduce a period of paid leave for menopausal women. There was going to be potentially a trial, and this was done in the public sector, but among other things, there's concern, Emma, that this would be discriminatory to men.
That's a bizarre line to me. We do not know enough about the menopause. We don't have enough medical information. We don't have enough understanding of it in society. And I know this because 3 years ago, it smacked me in the face quite hard. And all of the things that I thought about menopausal symptoms that are basically a joke until you get to it are much more complex than you realise. Brain fog is so real and terrifying. Hot flushes, I thought hot flushes were a bit of a joke when you see them on the TV or whatever. It's like a 20-minute flu. It's bizarre. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced. On the other hand, this is 50% of the population are going to go through this. So we need to have better medical understanding. I think most women my age want to keep working and don't want to take a great deal of leave. I certainly don't. I mean, I'm a freelancer, so I couldn't. But I do think we need better understanding of how to have just simple workplace adjustments to make it easier for people who are experiencing what can be quite debilitating symptoms that you don't recognise and understand how debilitating they are until you go through them. To make sure that we're OK.
David Curtin?
I think this story is hilarious because, first of all, it's the Women and Equalities Committee in Parliament, which is the most woke body in the whole of the parliamentary estate, and they're trying to find a problem which doesn't exist and a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. I mean, there's never, ever been a need for menopause leave. OK, there's maternity leave, yes, and then you have paternity leave as well. But they're just trying to create another thing in order to justify their existence. And then they realise, well, if we do this, the people who are even more woke say, well, we can't do this because this might be offensive to men and affect men's equality, because they see everything through the prism of the Equality Act. And in fact, that has then scuppered them from doing something which they didn't need to do in the first place. So they're tying themselves up in knots.
If me and you were colleagues and I was, you know, off on paid, not maternity leave, paid menopause leave, would you think to yourself, hang on a minute, why is she getting an extra 10 days off paid and I'm not? Would that offend you?
I should have midlife crisis leave as well, you know, because that would only be fair and equal.
Why? Are you having a midlife crisis?
No, I'm not myself, but just in case I did, I should do, because, you know, you have something, women have something, men should have something as well. I think, you know, that's what the Equality Act says, and that's what you have to do. So the whole thing is you've got woke people tying themselves up in knots with wokery.
Jim says, I've got no problem with women having some kind of time off granted. I'm very embarrassed as a man that there might be some men who think it's unfair. It means we men don't go through the mass kind of hormonal changes that women do. Let the women have what they need within reason, he says.
Reasonable.
Yes, but I like the within reason.
Yeah, the within reason is absolutely right. I mean, and you do have to have, and I would say that there should be a range of workplace adjustments where, I mean, most of the time I can work absolutely fine. Every now and again it does smack you around, and when you're, as I have been, moving into HRT, and that can have an immediate effect and then a long-term effect. I'm much better now that my HRT is pretty much settled and sorted. But before that was right, I was having 3 or 4 debilitating hot flushes a day. Now, I didn't need to take a whole day's leave, but I certainly needed half an hour to go and lie in a darkened room. And frankly, David, if any man at that point had told this very hormonal woman that I didn't have a real problem, you would have had a real problem.
Oh, well, there you go. That's fighting talk, isn't it? But, I mean, I actually think, you know, if you have a problem like that, OK, then you can take an hour off work or you can take a day off work, which is what people normally have. They have sick leave to do this. Everybody in every contract, with every employer has a certain amount of days of sick leave, and that can be used, you know, if you have...
Val makes an interesting point. Val says, as an older woman myself, the answer to this question is no in terms of menopause leave. Women have fought for equality, not to weaponise femininity as yet another work perk that is unavailable for men. You really are quite divided on this. Keith says, if you start giving women time off because of menopause, how long would it be before the trans females decided and demanded the exact same thing, saying, I am going through it mentally, so you need to recognise that, or I will sue for discrimination. Gina says, surely a modern woman with all of the wonderful drugs available can manage just to carry on, just like her grandma did, and so on and so forth. If this had passed, next would be young women taking 7 days off every single month. She says she's hit menopause and self-employed, and she managed. It takes me back to being at school. My best friend, every time of the month, she used to get off PE, because she used to say, you know, at a time of the month, I can't do PE. And she was just using it, really, as an excuse to get out of PE, Emma.
Well, I promise you, as a self-employed person, I can't use anything to get off work, because if I don't work, I don't earn. It can be very debilitating. It's not a long-lasting thing. I would never take a whole day off of menopause leave myself, but an hour or two. And just being aware. So I think there is a definite place that we can come to where we're more aware of what women of in their mid to late 40s to their mid to late 50s are likely to be going through and just making adjustments to the workplace to ensure you get the best out of them, which is actually good employment practice.
Steve, the best comment goes to you. You said, I think it should definitely go through. And then Steve says that he wants to identify as a woman so that he gets the time off as well.
Well, you can do that these days, can't you?
Yeah, Steve is a sensible man there. He is not messing around. Lots of you, though, the thing that you want to talk to me about is that topic before the break about the so-called children, asylum seekers. Jill says, if so many of these people didn't dispose of their passports or paperwork, etc., it would be very easy to check whether or not they are indeed children. Mike says so many of these people have connections to the UK because now so many people have come in that, of course, so many people going forward have friends and relatives, etc. Ron says, Michelle, the public are venting their anger now at the ridiculous asylum system because they've never had a say in it since day one. David says, Michelle, if you enter this country illegally, you're not seeking asylum. There is a legal process to seek asylum. But the point, I suspect, David, is that that system is flawed. People like Emma would argue, perhaps, that there's not enough safe routes. And I think it was Suella Braverman, I think it was, at a select committee. She was actually asked the direct question about what are the safe and legal routes, then, that people, I don't know, these people, instead of getting on the boat, what are the safe and legal routes that they can use? And I've got to say, I'm being polite here, she stumbled, to put it mildly. What I mean to say is she didn't really have an answer. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to ponder about schooling. Because for me, I think this is such a big topic, because when it comes to your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, whatever, and what they're being taught in schools, whether it's around sex education, all this gender stuff, whatever, who should have the final say into what those kids are taught? Should you, as the parent, the grandparent, whatever, be able to see the material that they're learning from and veto it, essentially, if you're not happy with it? Or does teacher know best? I want your thoughts, and I'll see you in 2.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewbs, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me. And they've got you guys talking at home, I can tell you that. The political consultant Emma Burnell and the leader of the Heritage Party, David Cairton. So many of you getting in touch about both those topics. The so-called children, asylum-seeking children that have gone missing, 200 of them. So many of you are getting in contact with that. I have to say, I'm trying hard to find someone that's got, or people that have got sympathy with them. So many people, Emma, are just pushing back on this whole kind of notion that we just don't know who lots of these people are. On this whole menopause thing, whether or not women should get time off, so many of you divided on this one. Sally says, how on earth do you think us women have managed in the past? We did it and we're all still alive. I've worked my entire working life and just got on with it. Can everyone please get a grip? That says Sally. Someone else, I've just lost your name, I'm afraid. You say, I thought women wanted equality. When they get it, why then do they seem to want special treatment? Keep your thoughts coming in, but let's talk about school, shall we? It surprised me to learn, but to my right, I've got David Curtin, a man who has been responsible for teaching children their sex education in schools in the past. You're a man of all talents, aren't you? The reason I'm talking about this today is because there is concerns that in some of these lessons, parents are not getting access to see what material their kids are being taught. I think as a parent, it's crucial in topics like sex education, all this gender stuff now that everyone seems to be obsessed with. I would want to look at that, determine it's suitable for my kid, and if I determined it wasn't, I would A, want them to, probably cancel it or whatever, or B, I'd take my kid out the lesson. Where do you stand on this? Because a lot of these organisations are saying that the parents can't be given access to this material because there's a breach of copyright.
First of all, I need to clarify what I was doing. I taught science, so as part of that, I taught biology, chemistry, physics to 11 to 14-year-olds, and I taught reproduction as part of general science to lots of children in lots of schools that I worked in until I became in.
Can you imagine doing that now? Yeah. It would be a minefield teaching these kids these days about reproduction. Anyway, go on.
The thing is, so I would make a distinction between sex education, which is what I did, teaching about reproduction, and sexuality education, which is what the UN and the World Health Organization call this kind of program that's being rolled out around the world everywhere. And in England, it's called relationships and sex education. That's the branding of it. It's way, way more than just teaching reproduction. It's teaching all kinds of non-reproductive sexual acts. It's teaching about transgenderism. It's teaching about LGBT stuff. And a lot of parents don't want their children to be taught this kind of thing because it's against their values, and that's absolutely fine. And the Human Rights Convention actually supports their right to say, well, my children, if I want them not to learn about these things that are conflict with my values, they can take them out of lessons. But this is going to children of a lower and lower and lower age, and right down to 4- and 5-year-olds now are being given material which is explicit and it's sexualising material, and absolutely it shouldn't be given to kids at all. So I 100% support parents' rights to see all material in this RSE subject, relationships and sex education, and also PSHE, which is other...
And do what once they've seen it then? So if they see this stuff, they say this isn't appropriate, then what?
Then they should be able to say, no, I'm going to take my children out of this subject. I'm not going to let my children sit in a lesson where these kind of sexualising materials...
You don't think that they should try and stop the material being taught? You think that they should just be able to remove their child from the teaching of it?
Well, both. I mean, some schools are adamant and insist that they're going to go and teach these things, which I think is absolutely wrong. And this has come in with a 2017 Act of Parliament, the Children and Social Care Act, I think, which brought in compulsory mandatory relationships education for children in all ages, from primary school, 4 or 5, right up to 18. So it's compulsory now. There are schools, some schools don't, they go out of their way to make sure that there isn't any age-inappropriate material, so that parents don't have to worry. But some schools are full of activist teachers who deliberately want to give the most sexualising material they can possibly find to teach the youngest children that are there all about transgenderism, etc., which goes against the wishes of the vast majority of parents, and it shouldn't be done.
One of the most cringe-worthy moments I've had on this show before was when I had to, well, I didn't have to, I chose to read out this passage from this book that was aimed at, I think it was 7-year-olds or something like that. It was... I mean, I can blush even thinking about it. If you're a long-time viewer, you might recall it. It was appalling and deeply inappropriate. And I asked the author, I got the author on, I said, why are you doing this? Why are you labelling this for 7-year-olds? I would have said it was almost soft porn. And she thought it was absolutely fine. I thought it was appalling. Anyway, Emma, your thoughts?
There are important things that we need to teach children around what is inappropriate sexual activity. The NSPCC are very, very good and very strong on the fact that we absolutely need to teach children what they should be looking out for to be able to say that's not right. And that is a big part of what we call sex and relationship education. So when we simply say there should be no sex and relationship education, we would be taking away some really important safeguarding information that children should have and should be informed with. The thing that sexualises children as they move from 9 to 13 is hormones, is adolescence, is puberty. That we all go through a period where we go from innocence to drivers, have your first kiss, have your first fumble, whatever. A better informed child will know more about A, being able to set their boundaries in confidence, and B, what those boundaries should be and how to manage them. It is really important that we don't create a sense of permissiveness where children don't feel able to say no. But we do that by good education. What does worry me about this story is that there should be no sense that corporations have the ultimate right to stop parents seeing material because of their copyright. That, for me, is a massive infringement of the corporate rights taking over anything from parents. So I think parents should be able to see the materials that their children are being presented. I think we need to have a conversation about how to do good, adequate, age-appropriate children and sexual health and relationship education. But I don't think we can be as plain as saying it's no good, because kids do need to know how to set boundaries, how to manage consent. And that's a really, really important part of learning to grow through puberty.
There are programmes, for example, All About Me. This has been in the press, you know, that is, some of it is teaching about self-stimulation to 4-year-olds, and that's been going into some schools. That is clearly totally age inappropriate and totally wrong, whatever measure you use. I mean, this is the kind of thing that is happening in some schools in England right now, and also in Wales, because they've introduced it there, and Scotland as well, because they're doing it there as well. So parents, yeah, they absolutely should have the right to see all of these things, but there are some things that simply shouldn't be going into any schools, you know, whatever age they are.
I agree.
And I think, you know, we should stick to what we had before, teach reproduction in secondary school, but primary school kids, they should be left to play with toys and stuff. Let kids be kids.
Primary school kids have been and can be abused by people, and they need to know where it's okay to say no to an adult. And that is a big part of what this education teaches them.
But you don't need to teach explicit materials.
These kids, you don't need to teach explicit materials to do that, but you do need to teach consent, and that is part of sexual education, and that is age-appropriate primary school education, and that's what I'm supporting. I'm not saying we should be sticking porn in schools, but the other thing is, we are pretending that there's only two inputs into children's world, parents and schools. And actually, there's this whole other world they're getting. And if you don't teach them consent, TikTok will. And I'd much rather they were getting good, valid information that is run by organisations like the NSPCC than some of the people that you see on TikTok.
This is the wider issue is that parents should be the primary educators of their children. They should be controlling what their kids see on the internet and their mobile phones and smartphones. I mean, I don't think that, you know, young children should have a smartphone at all, and they should be monitored totally on the internet.
But a lot of parents are not great parents, are they?
They're abdicating their responsibility. They need to take responsibility for their children, absolutely. This is something that you can't neglect as parents. So, I mean, this is a wider issue that we need to go back to a society where parents take responsibility as the primary educators and don't leave it to the schools, don't leave it to the state, don't leave it to TikTok. They've got to be in control.
Yeah, and I'm a big advocate of that. If you've got school-aged children, I would absolutely be getting in touch with their school and asking to see what content are your kids being taught? Because when I started delving into this, I read, as I've said, a story out, and it was awful, if you ask me. Maybe I'm just being a bit prudy, I don't know, but it made my eyes water, my hair curl, so it did. Adrian says, this is what's happened in America. All of this gives teachers free rein to indoctrinate children with woke Marxist propaganda, he says. Nick says a child's welfare is a responsibility of their parents. Teachers have no right or parental permission to do anything else. Teachers are charged with educating our children with set subjects and not their personal opinions or political views. Simon says, if my child's school can't tell me what they're teaching my children, I wouldn't be sending them to school. Surely, as a parent, I've got a right to know. Well, you would think so, but it is worth checking, particularly with this kind of subject, because if you ask me anyway, I think there's a few strange things going on, that is for sure. Keith says, I've got 9 children. 9 children, Keith? Oh, blimey.
Some sex ed.
Yeah. Keith says, yeah, Keith has 9 children and they were all taught sex education at home, not school. He says they're all now married with their own kids. It is nothing to do with the state, says Keith. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some more of your thoughts. But I also want to ponder this. 70% of hospital trusts are still imposing restrictions when it comes to visitation of patients. This is, of course, 3 years on or thereabouts from the height of all this COVID insanity. What do you think to this? Do you think it's right to have these kind of restrictions or not? Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewbs and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got the political consultant, Emma Burnell, and the leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin. Michael has been in touch saying, I don't usually agree with Emma, but as a former head teacher, I think she was right on that last issue. We're talking about sex education in schools. He says primary school do an amazing amount of work on sex education. We teach children about equal power relationships. And he says the vast majority of schools do not use explicit materials. I don't think any schools should be using explicit materials at all. And my concern, Michael, is if parents are asking to see the content of what it is that their children are being taught, there should never, ever be any reason why the answer to that question is no, you cannot see the material. I wouldn't accept that as a parent. I'd be having absolutely none of it. I'd be in that school quicker than I don't know what. It's very suspicious to me if you wouldn't be showing the parent what it is that you're teaching your kids. Doesn't sound right to me at all. Anyway, let's move on. 70% of hospital trusts are still placing restrictions on visiting relatives. This is all about the COVID thing. What do you think to this? I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. Do you think it's still acceptable now, in the here and now, that hospitals are doing this, Emma?
Well, it depends what these restrictions are. If the restrictions are you can't come, I think that's overbearing and unnecessary. If the restrictions are when you come into a hospital, please wear a mask, that's absolutely fine. These are places where people are immunocompromised. Nobody is asking you to wear a mask outside of the hospital, but coming in, be sensible, don't be a wally, wear a mask. It's really that simple. I went to visit a friend in hospital quite recently. It was perfectly fine. I walked in, I put a mask on. I went to see my friend. We were in his room alone. We weren't wearing masks in his room because we were quite separate. It's just about being sensible. There is COVID still out there, and for those people who are in hospital, they probably are more vulnerable, so we should therefore act appropriately to the situation.
Let me just understand. So you visited someone in hospital, so you put a mask on, but then as soon as you got close to the person that was apparently vulnerable, you took the mask off?
No, because he wasn't there for that particular illness. But as I was walking through, I was walking past a lot of people who could have been immunocompromised. My friend wasn't, so it was fine for him, and we had that advice. So I followed the rules. It's that simple.
Masks don't work in stopping transmission anyway, because you have a massive gap by the side of your mask and big gaps in the front of the mask in the mesh. It doesn't work. No one needs to wear a mask. There is no guidance, and there's not even guidance to wear a mask anymore, let alone legislation. Not that I agree with that in the first place. So any hospital that says you need to wear a mask at the moment, where we never had to do before, I mean, it's going too far. You shouldn't have to do that. But I think the restrictions that they are having more often is our social distancing restrictions and restrictions on visiting time. So they're restricting visits to 1 hour a day.
Visiting hours.
Well, yeah, but 1 hour a day for people is like way too low. I mean, that's like being in prison. That's prison times, isn't it? I mean, there should be visiting times. You know, it's normally 5, 6, 7 hours a day that you can go and visit relatives, not 1 hour a day, and then they're 23 hours a day with no chance of being visited by anybody. You need to lift that and let people see their relatives for a good amount of time each day if they want to.
If I don't know, certain people are watching this, they'll be shouting at the screen saying, if you wear whatever type of mask it is and it's all properly fitted and all the rest of it, it may have a slight reduction on transmission. So I do need to acknowledge that perspective.
I mean, that's why surgeons wear masks when they're making operations, right? There are reasons.
No, that's to protect. That's to protect from things like blood splashes and things like that.
When they're operating on open wounds, which is entirely different.
You're in a hospital.
Just like in a situation like where there's people around, you know, just walking through the corridors.
I mean, I'm not being funny, but are most corridors now actually full of patients?
I have the misfortune of spending a bit of time in children's hospitals, and I am disgusted and appalled by some of the experiences that I have under the excuse of COVID. They will do things like in the waiting rooms of these hospitals, they've removed all play activities. They'll remove things like, I don't know, distractions from the walls, etc., because of COVID. And people will say, well, why don't you take your own toys in to distract your child or whatever? But it's not as simple as that. It is distraction therapy, play, etc., is a huge part of a child going through medical procedures and all the rest of it. And I think it is so wrong that hospitals are still labouring under this kind of, oh, because of COVID this, because of COVID that. When someone's ill in hospital, a part of their wellness, a part of their recovery is around having their loved ones close by, having that contact, all the rest of it. And it's wrong, surely.
But if you're one person's loved one, and there are 1,000 other patients, you need to be making sure that you have that contact with that person. You're absolutely right, that's a huge part of the healing process, whilst not compromising the other 999 people in that hospital. It's just about taking sensible measures. Not excessive measures, but sensible ones. And I'm really sad that this has become a stupid culture war where one side wants to basically rub themselves in dirt and roll around in the hospital as much as they can, and the other side want to go in dressed like in a hazmat suit. And actually, it's so stupid that we can't just go, yes, I will wear a mask in a hospital when I go to visit my family for as long as I want to.
Let's just get back to where we were before. No masks, no tests, no social distancing.
Fred says, my wife had a major operation in hospital for a week and I wasn't even allowed to see her. I could only ring up. I mean, I think that is appalling. Steph says, this is all a joke. I couldn't see my nana before she died in the hospital, same as my dad. Again, so sad I find all of this. I spent a month in hospital during the pandemic. I was completely on my own, wasn't allowed a single solitary visitor. I'll never get over it, actually. I think it was appalling. And the fact that it goes on now still, I say, shame on you. Anyway, that's all I've got time for. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you at home. Have a fantastic evening. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Still the risk of some fog and freezing fog patches, particularly across southern parts of England. Through the next 24 hours we will see rain pushing south, and we can see that nicely on the pressure chart. A cold front pushes southwards across the UK, but high pressure always nearby, meaning those weather fronts will be on the weak side. Generally staying dry for many as we end the week, but weather fronts always nearby towards the north. Through this evening time, frost and fog reforming across central and southern parts of England. Elsewhere, generally quite cloudy, particularly as we head into the early hours, some rain and drizzle pushing in across the north and the west. Here, mild, temperatures holding up -5 or -6, again across central southern England as we head towards Wednesday morning. Cloudy, foggy start across the south, the fog patches dense in places. Band of rain pushing south across northern parts of the UK. This light and patchy generally, behind it though turning brighter into the afternoon across Scotland and Northern Ireland. There will be some showers across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 of these heavy. Cloudy and cold across the south of England, 5 or 6 degrees at best, 7 to 9 across the north of the UK. So feeling a little fresher than it has over the last couple of days here. Through Wednesday evening, that cloud and rain pushes and clears south of England, then a clear night to come, particularly across central areas. A few showers around coastal parts in that northerly breeze, but under the clearer skies, it'll allow temperatures to dip away. So generally falling 2 to 5 Celsius in towns and cities, a little below freezing in the countryside, but enough of a breeze generally to keep it frost and fog-free for many. Into Thursday, we'll see a bit of a westy split developing, cloudier skies towards the east, but there will be some brighter spells here, though 1 or 2 showers are possible. Best of the sunshine across the west, unbroken in places. Generally a light northerly breeze. Over the next few days, high pressure holds on, keeps it largely dry. Weak weather fronts try to move in from the north and temperatures around average.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.